Hello folks, welcome back to our epically long conversation of triangles. In this next section we are going to start talking about congruent triangles and specifically how they relate to one another. So you may remember from earlier in the year what the word congruent means. Congruent is another way to say equal. It's just the word that we use when we're talking about shapes or objects instead of numbers. So if you have two numbers that are the same in math, we say they're equal. If you have two things that are the same, two objects, two shapes, segments, whatever they are, we call them congruent. It's a fancy word for these two things are equal or these two things are the same. They're copies of one another. So congruent, they're copies. Okay, so if you have two congruent triangles, and that's where we're going to start with our conversation of congruency. We're going to start with the idea that we have congruent triangles and say, well, then what does that mean? If you tell me I have congruent triangles, what can I do with that? What good does that do me? Okay, so the first thing we want to make sure we note is that if you have congruent triangles, you are talking about triangles with the same size and also the same shape. Literally just two triangles where one is a copy of the other. Now, it doesn't mean they have to be sitting on the page the same way, right? One can be here and one can be like flipped over. That doesn't matter. We're talking copy paste, right? If you grab the pasted one and you move it somewhere else or you turn it over, you can even reflect it, like flip it over. They're still congruent. It's just not going to be congruent if you like stretch it, right? You don't want to do that. Same size, same shape. Okay. And this means that they have, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. This means that they have all these corresponding parts, right? In other words, there's going to be a part on this triangle that corresponds to the part over on this triangle, okay? And those are going to be congruent. In other words, when you make a copy and they're sitting right on top of each other, the parts that lay on top of each other, those are our corresponding parts. So you are going to have three angle pairs and three side pairs. And if you know that the triangles are congruent, then you know that you have three congruent angle pairs, one triangle to the other, and three congruent side pairs from one triangle to the other. So if you look at these two triangles down here, they are congruent, right? We can tell they are congruent. They're marked up like crazy. Notice here, angle A has one little arc in it, and angle D has one little arc in it. Those two angles are congruent. Okay. Angle B has two tick marks or little arcs. Angle E has two tick marks. Those two angles are congruent. And then last but not least, angle C, three of them, and angle F has three of them. Okay. You can also see that you have pairs of equal sides. So AB matches up with DE. BC, two tick marks, matches up with FE that has two tick marks. And AC, three tick marks, matches up with FD. Okay, so here's the first thing we have to talk about. We're not always going to be given a picture. What we're going to be given is something like this, right? This is called a congruency statement. Now, you might glance at that and say, oh, it's just telling me two triangles are congruent, right? Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. But there is a ton of information inside of that statement. So I want you to see these words down here. It says a valid congruency statement must match all corresponding angles and sides. So what does that mean? That means if your congruency statement is written correctly, all the angles that match, like A and D, B and E, they should also match in the names. In other words, where they are in the names. So I want you to notice something over here. Do you see how A is the first letter for triangle ABC? Okay. A is the first letter for triangle ABC. If you go over to triangle DEF, the angle that corresponds with A is D. Notice that D is the first letter here. So from this name, even if I couldn't see this picture, I could look at this and go, okay, A and D must be the angles that correspond to one another because they're both first in the name. I could say B, look, in the middle, and E in the middle correspond to one another. They must be equal. And last but not least, I guarantee you that C and F are equal because they are both in the last position. So C has 3 tick marks, F has 3 tick marks. Okay, so when I'm naming them, I like to think about the angles because they're just one letter, but it also works for the sides. Let me clear this a little bit so we have a little bit of room to work. Oh. Okay, so instead of looking at angles, let's look at sides and how those flesh out in the name. Okay, if you look at this name here, A, B, C, D, E, F, look, A and B are the first 2 letters, right? So here's side AB. Go over to the other triangle, DE. First 2 letters are DE. Look here, side DE. Those are the ones that correspond. So the first 2 letters of each name are giving me a pair of sides that correspond. The last 2 letters will do it too. Right? So if I go BC, that should match up with EF. Let's see. BC is here. EF is here. 2 tick marks, 2 tick marks. Right. And then of course there's one side left. To get the last side, you go like this. You take out the middle letter. Well, I like to take one finger. I cover the first letter, the second letter, and then the third letter, and that gives you your the 2 letters that are left to make the sides. But if you do just the 2 underneath and then do the little arc, taking out the middle letter, AC and DF should match. There's AC, there's DF. They match. Okay, so this is one of many ways to write a congruency statement for these 2 triangles, because it doesn't matter the order in which you write the letters, as long as when you write the letters for the other triangle, they line up. All the corresponding parts line up. So the 2 smallest angles are in the same position in the name. The 2 largest angles are in the same position in the name, and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be any particular order. You don't have to go small to big or anything like that. You just got to make sure that the part in the first triangle that lines up with the part in the second triangle, that if I look at the names, I'm going to see those 2 things in the same spot. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. Here they gave me A, B, C, and D, E, F. If they gave us a different way to name the first triangle. So what if I said to you, you know what? I'm going to name this first triangle ACB. Instead of going alphabetical order, I'm feeling crazy. Instead of going ABC, I'm going to name it ACB. Okay. When I write my congruency statement, when I write my other triangle's name, I can't write DEF anymore, because now I have to make sure that my parts line up. Right? So I can't write DEF anymore. What I have to do is say, okay, well, what lines up with A? Okay. A has 1 little tick mark. Let's go over here. What has 1 little tick mark? D. So since A is first, on this side, D has to be first. Okay. What lines up with C? C is 3 tick marks. So I'm going to come over here. Which one has 3 tick marks? It's F. So F is next. And then the last letter here is B. So I come up here. Which one corresponds? Which one goes with B? The 2 arc angle. Here we go, E, the 2 arc angle. So this is just another way to write the same statement. And again, look, all my matching parts are going to line up. If I look at my first 2 letters, AC has to match DF. AC matches DF, 3 and 3. CB, the last 2, has to match FE. CB, 2. Was it FE? FE, 2. Okay, so that's what we call a valid congruency statement. All right, so I'm going to give you another triangle, and I want you to give me the rest of the congruency statement. I have to move my loading head. Okay, so write me the congruency statement for triangle BAC. What triangle is that congruent to? BAC. All right, let's check it out. Should we clear these triangles a little bit? Make this look a little prettier. I'm gonna just do that. Boom. Nope, I'm also gonna switch the color of my pen because I'm sick of looking at red pen. Okay, so BAC. So over here, triangle. What goes with B? B has 2 tick marks. Over here, that's E. What goes with A? A has 1 tick mark. Over here, where's his partner? That would be D. And then what goes with C? Well, let's see. C has 3 tick marks, so go find its partner. 3 tick marks, F. Okay. Again, I like to focus on the angles when I'm coming up with my name, and then you can use the sides just to check and make sure you did it right. So let's see. BA, if I'm looking at side lengths, BA should match ED. Let's go make sure that's right. BA, 1 tick mark, ED, 1 tick mark. Let's check another one just to make sure. AC should match DF. AC, 3 tick marks, DF, 3 tick marks. We got it. Okay. All right. My computer is ignoring me. All right, here we go. There's your next one. Triangle BCA. Give me the congruency statement for triangle BCA. Okay, let's see. BCA. So once again, I'm going to clear. B goes with 2 arcs. E. So over here, if the first letter here is B, first letter over here has to be E. C. 3 tick marks. So go over here, find my 3 tick mark angle. That's F. And then last but not least, A is my 1 tick mark angle. So I come over to this triangle. There it is, D. The parts that line up. So again, look at this. All I did was rearrange the letters. Up here it was ABC. Now it's BCA. Notice instead of, so A moved from the first position to the last position. Look over here. D moved from the first position to the last position. C used to be last. Now it's in the middle. F used to be last. Now it's in the middle. You just have to make sure that the letters that are the matching parts line up in the name. As long as you do that, as long as you do that, you will have a valid congruency statement. Okay, so once you have congruency statements, you can figure out all the congruent parts of the triangle, right? You can list, here's my 3 angle pairs, these guys match up, and here's my 3 side pairs, these guys match up. You can write 6 congruency statements. 3 angle pairs that match from one triangle to the next, 3 side pairs that match from one triangle to the next. And we have this theorem that we call it, and it's very long-winded theorem, so we shorten it with an acronym, and also Pittsburgh Public Schools love acronyms, so why not? It's called CPCTC. Say that 5 times fast. CPCTC, 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 CPCTC. I did it. Okay. CPCTC. I'll give you a hint. The triangle. The T is for triangle. Man, that was a great hint, huh? Okay, so T is for triangles. Okay, now 2 of these C's stand for congruent. Okay, so look here. CP is corresponding parts of congruent triangles are, where's my pen? Congruent. CPCTC, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. What does that mean? If you tell me the 2 triangles are congruent, I know I can match up all the corresponding parts and know that they are congruent. And it works the other way too. If I know that all the corresponding parts are equal, that they match up, then I know the triangles must be congruent. I can go either way, right? So here's another way to say it. It says if we know two triangles are congruent, then we know that every pair of corresponding parts is also congruent. All right, so let's try an example. CPCTC. I am with it now. CPCTC. Okay, so notice here they didn't give us a picture. No picture, just angle names or triangle names. Okay, so this first triangle is named JKL and the second triangle is named PQR. So I don't need pictures of them. Sometimes it helps to have them. I have no idea what these triangles actually look like. I'm just going to draw two random triangles. JKL, PQR. There they are. All right, so I should be able to list 3 angle pairs that are equal and 3 side pairs are equal. And I don't need diagrams that are all marked up with tick marks and arcs and the angles because I have this congruency statement here. And I know that all of the congruencies are sitting there waiting for me in that name. So the 3 letters are always going to be your 3 angles, right? Those are the 3 corners of the triangle. So I know, as far as angles go, that I'm going to have an angle J, an angle K, and an angle L in the first triangle. Over here, I know I have an angle P and a Q and an R. The question is, which ones match up? Well, look. All you gotta do is look to your name. Angle J, first letter, has to match up with angle P. So I know that angle J is congruent to angle P. Angle K has to be paired with angle Q. So K congruent to angle Q. And last but not least, the last letter, L, has to match up with R. So angle L is congruent to angle R. Now, again, they may give you a picture where you can see that by the markings on the diagram. They may not. If all they give you is this name, that's fine. I can write all my angle congruencies. I can also write my side congruencies, okay? Because I can look at, I wish I could, well, I guess I can a little bit. Okay, so what I was saying earlier is sometimes I just like to take my finger and cover up first letter, cover up the second letter, cover up the third letter. And I was just thinking, if I do that on my screen, you're not going to see my finger. Sometimes it takes me a minute. So instead of using my finger, I'm just going to scratch them out. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cover up my first letter. Right? It's going to help me get my sides. Look here, if I cover up the first letter, I'm left with KL and QR. KL has to be congruent to QR. And sure enough, look at this picture we drew. KL, QR. There they are. They're in the same position. Right? I can do it again, and just instead of blocking out the first letter, I'm going to block out the second letter. Right? So now I'm going to come down here. I'm going to block out the K, and I'm going to block out the Q. What I have, side JL has to be congruent to PR. And last but not least, don't erase everything. I can block out my last letter. And this is much more efficient if you just move your finger. Alas. Okay, so if I ignore my third letter here, I get side JK and side PQ. So again, look here, JK, PQ. They're in the same position if I make just a carbon copy. So JK has to be congruent to PQ. Now I want you to notice here, and this is a little thing that's kind of important. I'm writing KL with a little line over it because I mean side KL, segment KL. And then I'm writing QR with a little line over it because I'm referring to a side or a segment. If I don't draw this segment thing over top, if I just write KL, what I'm really referring to then is the length or some number that is the length of KL. And in that case, once I'm referring to a number, I'm not going to use congruency anymore. I'm just going to use an equal sign. So remember in the beginning of the video, we talked about the difference between equals and congruent. It's a little thing, but it's important. Okay, so take a moment and I want you to write the congruency statements for number 2. So you have 2 triangles, WXY and EFG. Okay, I want you to write 3 angle statements. Right? Now you can't type congruency, so you can just write them as pairs, right? You can say W and whatever, X and whatever. When I write it, I'm going to write congruent, but you don't have to do that. So just write me my 3 angle pairs that correspond and write me my 3 side pairs that correspond. Okay, ready? I like the angles best. I think the angles are easier because all you have to do is look at one letter. So here we go. I've got angle W matches up with angle E. Angle X is in the middle. So I'm going to come over here. Angle F is in the middle. Those must be the same. Angle Y is last. It must be the same as G over here because it's last. It's literally just where they are in the name. Okay, if the congruency statement's correct, that's the way it works. All right, to get our sides. Again, I could move my finger here, or another way you can do it is, again, just ignore one letter at a time. So if I say, okay, first 2 letters, WX and EF. So I'm going to say, okay, WX has to be congruent to EF. I could go last 2 letters. So XY has to be congruent to FG. And then last but not least, ignore the middle letter and go WY and EG. That'll get them every time. My pen. WY and EG. And there I have it. 6 congruency statements. 6. Okay, so down here it says write another valid congruency statement. Again, all you got to do is rearrange these letters, right? So if I say, okay, instead of WXY, I'm going to write YXW. I'm going to reverse. Right? Instead of WXY, I'm going to write YXW. All I have to do is go over here and rearrange those letters in the same exact way. Instead of EFG, I'm going to write GFE. Notice again, the W is last, the E is last. They still line up. The X and F have to still line up. They're both still in the middle. The Y and the G have to still line up. They're both first now. Okay? That'll get it. Okay, so sometimes we're just listing generically what our parts are. Other times we're actually given numbers. Right? So if you look at this problem here, they gave us, oh no. This isn't the one I want. Hold on. These are the ones I want. We're going to do this top one, number 4. Okay. So notice in number 4, they gave us some numbers here, right? So I can not only tell you which sides are the same for my congruency statement here and which angles are the same, but I'm going to be able to tell you at least a little bit how big they are. Okay. So I'm going to get out my color coding because I think that might help a little bit. Okay, so first things first, my highlighter. Notice here in my congruency, S and B we know have to match. So over here, angle S has to line up with angle B. Oh boy, here we go with my computer again. All right, so I want you to notice something here. I now know something that I didn't know before. Since I know that S and B are the same, and they gave me 67 for S, guess what? I can take that 67 and move it over here. I know B has to be 67 because S and B have to be the same. If only my pen would write. If only. Okay. So let's get a different color. T and F have to line up. Angle T, angle F. Okay, so let's see here. T and F. And then we'll just wait quietly for the computer. Perfect. Okay, so I don't know how big either of those are, so there's no measurement I can move right now. And then last but not least, I have a third angle pair that I can use, and that is W and N. So W and N. Okay, so W and N. So look, they gave us that N is 82. So I can take that 82 and move it over here. So already I know 4 of my 6 angles, right? I'm going to get the other 2 by using everybody's favorite theorem, and that is that we know we have 180 degrees in a triangle, right? So if I take my 82 and my 67 that I know are already there, that is 159. So to figure out what angle T is, or angle F, because they're the same, all I have to do is take 180 minus 159, and that gives me what? 30, 21? Yep, 21. So T is 21, and F is 21. I got all my angles. So if I come over here, you'll notice in the questions what it asks for. Oh my gosh. It didn't ask for all 6 angles. It only asked for 3, right? It asked for angle W. Well, I know angle W because I stole it from angle N. It's got to be 82. It asked for angle B. Well, I know angle B because I stole it from angle S. That's got to be 67. And then it asks for angle F. Well, angle F and angle T are the same, and I got that from the whole 180 degrees in a triangle thing. Okay. Now, these 3 are asking about side lengths. Again, notice there's no line above here, right? So it's asking for the length of side BN. Not asking for a statement like who is BN congruent to. It's saying how long is BN, right? If they wanted which side was congruent to BN, they would have to put the line over top here, and they would have to use a congruent mark here. But they didn't. They just want to know how big BN is. Okay, well, I don't know how big BN is, but I can tell who it corresponds to over here. B and N are the first and last letters of this triangle name. So if I go over to my other triangle, that side, BN, is going to correspond to the letters in the same position, SW. Okay, well, SW is 9, so guess what? I'm going to bring that 9 right on over here. Congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, let's see. It wants to know what TW is. Okay, well, I don't know how long TW is, but I know that TW corresponds to FN. T and W are letters are in positions 2 and 3. FN, positions 2 and 3. So, well, how long is FN? FN is 14. Guess what? TW is 14. I just have to translate it over. Okay, and then last but not least, BF. Well, let's see. BF, I don't know, but I know what it corresponds to. BF, those letters are in positions 1 and 2. So I come over here. Positions 1 and 2 is ST. This triangle tells me ST is 17. So I know that I can translate that measurement over here. 17. Okay, there's my last one. So again, sometimes, like in the first problem, they ask us to name the parts, specifically the parts that line up, right? But it's also possible that they give us some measurements and then they just want us to understand that because the parts line up, we can take a measurement from a triangle and transfer it over to its corresponding part in the other triangle. Okay, so you're going to do 2 of these in Schoology, and they're going to be just like this. In fact, they're going to be numbers 3 and 5. So these 2 problems that we didn't do in the PowerPoint, you're going to do in Schoology. All right, we will see you soon. Any questions that you have on CPCTC, go ahead and put in the end of the video. Have a good day.